when a tenant has an addiction that has to be fed by money, whether it's alcohol, drugs, gambling, whatever, that's where the rent is going to get impacted, and we are in competition with the vices.
Hello fellow PMs, and welcome to the second episode of PM Chat. Today I am joined by Darren Hunter from darrenhunter.com, and our subject topic is serial offenders over the Christmas period. Welcome, Darren.
Hi Russell, thanks for allowing me to join you on your show. I'm sure it's going to be a bit of fun today.
No problems. Thank you for your time. It's always good to chat to one of the well-known names out in the industry.
No worries, that's fine. So we want to get into the topic of serial late rent offenders at Christmas time. I think that's a good topic.
Yes, it's that time of year again where the drinking and smoking becomes more important than rent.
Oh, that's cool. I think I don't know, Russell. What we're going to cover first? What do you want to?
First question I got is, it's 3 weeks before Christmas. Should we be doing something different with our serial offenders than we do every other week of the year?
Okay. Before I answer that question, what I want to do is let's talk about what a serial late rent offender actually is. This is a different type of tenant, different from our average tenant. So the average tenant will either pay the rent on time or get behind every now and again. Now, they are likely to possibly give you a call, let you know, hey, look, I've had a problem with my payment, XYZ has happened. I will pay X dollars on X day, and they're very cooperative. And so these strategies and things I'm talking about is not for the average tenant, because the serial late rent offender is a lot different. The issue with the serial late rent offender, we've got to understand what's going on in their life. These are people that deliberately are behind in their rent on a regular basis. When you chase them, there's a sense of constant frustration. There's always a different story, a different explanation, some more ridiculous than others. You know that there's a level of deception going on. This person's name keeps on coming up on your rent arrears or your rental delinquencies list, depending on if we're the United States or Australia.
I'm sure they've got a list of reasons that they haven't paid rent that's just sitting there.
They know who they are. And the things, what's going on in their life is that these people don't have a memory problem. They didn't forget to pay. They didn't just suddenly wake up on a Friday morning and they've got 2 weeks rent sitting in their account and go, oh my goodness, how did all this money get in here? I've got no idea. They don't have a memory problem. So we don't have to send them a reminder. That's a really dumb thing that property managers can do, is send these people a reminder. Just, we wish to remind you they didn't forget. So let's not take that angle or tact. Also, they don't have a money problem. They have as much money as everybody else in the way that they get paid every week, every 2 weeks, regularly like everybody else. So they don't have a money problem. What they have is a priority problem, and they prioritize other things over what is the most important payment, which is accommodation. So that they've prioritized other things like smoking. And of course, where I'm teaching rent arrears, and I usually have a global audience, when I deal with the Americans and say, well, these tenants are spending all their money on cigarettes, the Americans don't understand the tax that's placed on cigarettes here. We're talking that $25, $30 a packet. I don't know what it is these days, but it's huge. In America, the tenant says smoking, you're probably paying $5 a packet. So smoking here, if a tenant has a serious smoking habit, that is seriously going to interfere with the rent monies. Also, gambling, alcohol, or drugs, or expensive living. So when a tenant has an addiction that has to be fed by money, whether it's alcohol, drugs, gambling, whatever, that's where the rent is going to get impacted. And we are in competition with the vices because if this person has an addiction. So that's where it's actually coming from. One other thing we need to understand is that when we're doing training, we regularly do a time and motion analysis because I'm a time management trainer. And we've worked out the average amount of time with a tenancy that turns over once in a year. So tenant moves in and moves out in a year. It's approximately 18 hours to 22 hours of work from leasing right through to sign up, right through to routine inspections, repairs and maintenance, any rent arrears, right through to the vacating and bond refund. It's about, on average, 20 hours a year if the tenancy turns over in a year. But when it comes to eviction, with all of the serving of regulated forms, with the going to tribunal or courts, with the going to and from the property to make sure that if the tenant's there, and then there is the communication with the owner, serving of course, regulated forms. I think we've covered that. Then right down to the eviction, the amount of time that goes in, the actual forcing out of the tenant and getting vacant possession that could involve a sheriff or a bailiff. Right through to getting all the tradespeople in there and all the stress and all the problems. We've actually measured that process alone with all of the time, travel time, it's about 20 to 30 hours.
That's on top of your normal leasing and everything, so 30
on
plus
top,
20, so 50 hours.
It's huge. And if you can imagine, if you had several of these a year, it's going to blow your time management right out of the water. Plus the stress. And let's just face it, an eviction to a property manager is like a packet of cigarettes that takes years off your life with stress and erosion to your heart, mind, and soul.
Yeah, it's not a fun experience.
And at the end of the day, an eviction is awful. It's messy for the property manager. It's messy for the owner because now the property's got a whole heap of wear and tear. And look, my properties are managed by an agency and they got it wrong the very first tenant. I actually questioned them on it. I said, guys, I'm not happy with this application. They said, Darren, stop being the property management expert here and let us do our job. And I said, all right, guys, go for it. 3 weeks later, they're on the phone apologizing to me. And it took a year to get this very deceptive, negligent tenant out of the property. Now, I had good landlord insurance, but it still didn't cover all of the expenses because no insurance policy will. Yep. The tenant left owing about $400 to $500 worth of water. I got all my other costs covered, not a problem. But even so, there was a level of wear and tear on the property as well. So, of course, I got a second best. Had I not have a quality landlord insurance policy, I would have been financially burned for sure. Now, also, who are the other victims of the tenant and their attitudes not paying rent? The children and the tenant's children. And I think there is nothing worse for a property manager at an eviction to look those kids in the eye and say, I'm sorry, but you haven't got a home tonight. That is a terrible situation. So if we can then look at eviction as a really, really, really bad thing that we do not want to happen on our watch, then our other practices have to be proactive and we have to just go, okay, the tenant who's a serial late rent offender are their own worst enemy. They will allow themselves to spend more rent and get behind and self-deceive themselves, self-deception to think that they will be able to catch up later. They won't be able to. They'll go past their financial point of no return and they'll go, oh my goodness, I'm in too much financial trouble now. And they will head to the cliff of eviction. And so we have to step in and actually think for them and say, hey, what are you doing? And drop a gate on them early. So with that in mind, we've established what a serial late rent offender is. And I have to state that with my zero tolerance late rent practices and teaching I've done for years, I get criticized regularly that I'm just, by the do-gooders, I'm just too tough. But at the end of the day, every eviction I've personally ever been involved with when I was a property manager, every time it was the vices. It wasn't someone that got cancer. It wasn't someone that lost their job or anything like that. Because every time I've had a tenant that has said, hey, I've just lost my job. I'm now going to have a short-term rent payment problem. They always work with you. And in those cases, you work with them and you just help them through it. So with this in mind, let me just tell you a story. And we're talking about 3 weeks now before Christmas. What can we do? So let me tell you a story. In Adelaide, where I'm from, where I'm based, we have fire risks in the Adelaide Hills.
Yep.
And so like Sydney and Melbourne, we've all got fire risk areas. Now, also in those fire risk areas are known convicted arsonists. They live there. Now, convicted arsonists that have done their time have every right to live in society like the rest of us, and the police know that. However, they've proven themselves to be not to be trusted when it comes to lighting fires. So what the police do is that 4 weeks before Christmas or 6 weeks before Christmas, at the start of the intense fire season, it could even be October, they go and door knock these people. And they say, "Hi, Mr. Smith, just letting you know that you are obviously we know you're a convicted arsonist, which means you've got a track record. So if we see you driving down the street, if we see you walking down Rundle Mall in the city, if we see you driving on a country road, we'll be taking notes and we will be watching you. Have a good Christmas."
Wow, that's a very powerful message.
Do you think that those convicted arsonists would be happy with that? No way. But they've been put on notice. That's a proactive strategy to say, we are watching you. So if that convicted arsonist think, well, hey, I could actually do this, they now know that there's someone there watching them. And they're least likely then to cause that behavior, which can result in fires or whatever. So translating that now to property management. Your serial late rent offenders are your arsonists. And they may think that they're not going to get themselves into trouble over Christmas time, but they're at most risk at this time than anywhere else in the year, because aside from the vices, the addictions, they've now got Christmas spending. And they're more likely to go into eviction more than anyone else. So 4 weeks, the end of November, or right now is a perfect time, they need a letter. And the letter needs to say something along the lines of, "Hi, Mr. Smith, our records indicate that you haven't been able to pay your rent on time in the past. We're just letting you know that Christmas time is a time where typically tenants do fall behind in their rent payments, and we have the unfortunate job as property managers to evict them, and it makes us enjoy our Christmas a lot less. So we ask you in the coming festive season that you focus on making sure that your rent payments are made on time every time, so we all can enjoy our Christmas." Words along those lines. Now, is that going to tick them off? Yes. Is that going to upset them? Yes. I hope so. Because what is the greater evil at the moment? And the greater evil is that we are trying to avoid eviction. The alternative is that we just be nice, sweet, possibly professional about it, and then go into reactive mode. So we start chasing them when they actually get behind. By that time, it could be too late. Let's be proactive. So that's a letter that you could send out. Now, if people want a copy of that letter, they just need to go to darrenhunter.com, go to my knowledge library, go to the property manager resources. In there under rent arrears, they'll find a copy where they can download a Word document of my Christmas letter.
Awesome. I think I may have stolen that from you a couple of weeks ago. So
that's cool. Well, make it available. I don't care if people don't get it from me, but make it available, get it out there, and get it out there to your known serial offenders, keeping in mind what's the lesser of the evils. You could get complaints. You got to let the boss know, but the complaints are better than eviction. Alrighty? The cost of eviction is not worth it. So here are some proactive things that we can do. We talked about the Christmas letter. Get out your tenant list, highlight who your serial offenders are, send them that letter, and make sure it's not sent to your regular tenants, please. Let's not send good tenants. Otherwise, you're probably going to find yourself on a current affair or some TV show, and you're going to blame me. Alrighty? So let's not go there. If you're going to get me on TV, make sure you spell my name right, by the way.
Come on, all publicity is good publicity.
It is. Okay. Okay. Other things we can do also. So with our serial late rent offenders, they are known offenders. So let's not worry too much about not offending them. Send them an SMS text the day their rent is due. So it will be along the lines of, Mr. Smith, we just wish to confirm your rent is due today. If you're unable to pay today, please call me today. 2 days. And so send them a text when the rent is due. And if they call up and go, well, your track record tells us we need to send you this. So there's another strategy there as well. Other than that, it's just placing pressure on them, getting on the phone 1 or 2 days after they've got behind, they haven't called you, and just get their early intervention. Just place the pressure. Do not relent. Your job is now, if they're not going to change, you need to keep the pressure on until lease renewal time, and then just get rid of them. Get them out, because they're a risk to everybody. Now with owners, with Christmas time, of course, any owner at end of month is not getting a full month payment minus agent fees and so forth. Well, that owner needs a phone call proactively so they can make sure that their rent is covered with their mortgage. Very, very important. Also make sure you have the conversation with your owners. Mr. Owner, I need to ensure that you have quality landlord insurance, not sourced from a bank, not sourced from a supermarket, because that's where they're going to come undone at claim time. You need to make sure they have the quality policies. Now, my business, and I'm part of Inspired Growth Training, we support EBM landlord insurance. However, of course, they're one of several quality policies out there. I've got to be very careful. I can't give advice here, but you need to make sure your agency's in partnership with a quality landlord insurance provider, and that gives that quality cover. There are several out there.
And most of us know who they are as well. Like, most of us have done enough claims to know who we should be recommending and who we shouldn't be recommending, like you said.
And we need to be having conversations with our owners and giving them horror stories of where owners thought they were covered, but they weren't, with bank source landlord insurance or a supermarket source, which is the worst thing. You may as well not have insurance. So having those conversations before the rent gets behind. Because if the tenant's in arrears, you can't go to a landlord insurance now and say, cover us. It's too late. It's like going to a life insurance saying, I've got cancer, I want cover now. They just won't do it. So you've got to have those conversations, tough love conversations with your owner. Other than that, with your SMS stuff like that, it's just being persistent. Now, a serial late rent offender, your phone calls aren't working anymore. SMS texts aren't working anymore. Letters aren't working anymore. What else can you do? Maybe call them up. Look, Mr. Smith, our phone calls, letters, emails, nothing's working anymore. I'm beside myself. What I'd like you to do is come into the office so we can have an appointment with the manager, because that's the next best thing to us considering eviction. Yeah. And they'll kick and spit and carry on. Oh, I don't want to do that. I promise I won't do it again, or whatever. But an appointment in the office with the boss is an appropriate thing, I believe, or pushing for that anyway. Awesome. So hopefully there's some strategies for property managers to use, but don't allow a serial late rent offender to pull the wool over your eyes.
Amazing. So obviously Christmas period, all the PMs want to be taking some time off and relaxing. Who should be managing this? Should the principal in the business be getting involved and taking over this control, or should the property manager be on top of it through this period? Who's the best person to sort of take control of this?
Well, if they're a professional agency, they would have employed a temp or something like that. To come. A property manager needs to be able to switch off. If the property manager is trying to take holidays and they're still managing things, well, you haven't switched off. And you simply, it's like a laptop, you're on battery power. And there's only so much battery power you're going to have before you go clunk. You've got adequate time off so you can recharge and come back. Whether the boss chooses to then take up and manage the portfolio, I don't know how many principals out there are actually any level of competency when it comes to property management. You've got to decide whether a crap job is actually better than no job at all. But I think a temp or just going to a temping agency is the best thing that you can do. Other than that, making sure that perhaps you have some VAs trained up, outsourced VAs that can do the basics, that can send an SMS out when the tenant's 2 days behind in the rent, can send an email out that may not make the phone calls, but they may be able to do all that other troubleshooting that you can then switch off and have a good Christmas time.
Well, amazing, Darren. Thank you. There's some great knowledge there that I will definitely, and analogies that I'll definitely be taking forward and sharing with my team. And hopefully
I got one more tip for you.
Shoot.
One more tip. Have you ever had a tenant that, for example, promises you they'll pay the rent and you call them and they give you amazing, very credible explanation and how they're going to be paying the rent tomorrow? So you have a conversation. Look, I'm sorry, lovey. I'm really sorry that I didn't pay the rent. Oh, how bad is that? You must think terrible of me. I tell you what, I'll pay 2 weeks rent tomorrow. Will that be okay? And you go, well, okay, sounds credible. And you type down 2 weeks rent paid tomorrow in the system. And then 2 days later, nothing. You give the tenant a call. Oh, sorry, lovey. I'm really sorry. You must be so upset with me now. Look, I feel that I've let you down. I tell you what, I'll pay 3 weeks rent this Friday. Is that going to be okay? And you go, oh, all right, sounds credible. Put it down. The next week, nothing. You ever had that before?
I normally stop them at the first time. I normally tell them day one. Normally, as soon as they tell me that they're going to pay that week's rent, I say, look, I'm going to hang up this phone call. I'm going to talk to the owner. And I'm also going to advise the owner that if that week's rent doesn't come, I'm going to be coming back to you, and all your goodwill and everything is now gone, and I'm just following a process to get you out of the property. So
my point is that if you keep on talking and they sound so credible, so believable, and they're really, and you just got complete frustration, they deliver nothing, it's likely you're dealing with a gambler.
Okay.
It's likely they've got a gambling problem because they're very, very good at deception. So, yeah, that's just what I've learned through my years in property management as well, when you get that type of person.
It's interesting because I deal with all my arrears within the business, and very rarely do I think of what's the underlying clause of what's happening here. Like, I have the conversation and they tell me what the issues are, and then make notes and details, and at the end of the day I follow a process. But I've never looked at it and go, oh, actually, maybe it's our job to be helping these people and to make them aware of what's going to happen.
I think making them aware of what's going to happen, your job, I don't believe, is to help them. That's someone else's job. Whoever it is, your job is best interest of your owner. And work with them as best you can. But if you can't manage them in, you've got to manage them out. So, and all the work that it takes. The last thing you want is an owner to say, well, give them another go, give them another 6 months, whatever. You've got to now give that owner some tough love. You need to be maintaining the tenant. That's the best solution.
Yeah, because I don't want to be dealing with that daily. That's part of the job, but at the same point, it's a part of the job you don't want to be doing. So if you can get rid of it from day one, it makes your life easy and you can concentrate on service rather than, calling these people and continuing to hound them over something they should be doing in the first place. Amazing, Darren.
All right, well, all good.
Thank you for your time. And I hope you enjoyed the second episode of PM Chat.
All right, mate. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers.